りおしまい。
Welcome back, Dragon Ballers, to Get the Mic, the only show where your host on the left, Owl,
and your host on the right, Brock,
dissect fiction for its mythological significance. And on this episode, we are going to be finishing up this last little filler arc and finally getting into the last Tenkaichi Budokai. So we're pretty excited to bring it here to a close and finish up this little arc. Before we do that, I don't think we have too much housekeeping stuff. Hopefully you'll be able to stream more consistently here in a moment. The next couple of weeks we should be able to keep on at least one episode a week. So that should be helpful for everyone. I don't think I have anything else though. Just before the show, just now, we were talking about doing branching out to some other series. So we'll see if that manifests or how that manifests, I guess I'll say it like that. Anything to add there, Brock?
Not a lot. I'm not sure that last episode we got actually into why the previous episode was called Going Their Own Ways, which I think we'll get into a little bit more in this episode, actually. I mentioned it briefly at the beginning, like, I want to know why this episode is called that. What you think? And it kind of touches a little bit on it thematically, but I feel like the naming of this episode and last episode is a little bit weird, you know?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. What is the other one is Hotter Than Magma, so it's like the same thing for this one too. What was the other title, the original title, I guess?
It's called like each going their own way or going their own ways. Like it's the same between
idea.
The two.
Oh wow, yeah.
And the same thing here. One's called Hotter Than Magma, one's called Hotter Than Lava.
But yeah, they don't really go off on their own way until this one anyways, so.
Right.
And go off is not really the phraseology I should use there. But anyways, let's go ahead and get started, I suppose. Enough of Popo being awesome there. Look at Popo right there.
He hitting that.
Yeah. All right, so let's go ahead. Ha ha ha. Not this time, Toei. Anyways, so the opening scene, we're at the upper world, and Goku is actually, we should fast forward through this. This is a recap. Yeah, so hotter than magma. There it is. So basically, the volcanoes erupted and the villagers are fleeing, carrying whatever they can. Is this the right episode? Hold on. I think I have the wrong episode synopsis here, even though it says 132. Give me a quick second. So basically, the volcano erupts, everyone's flying away, trying to get away, except for one guy, and that is the grandfather. And so Mint and her brother are trying to convince him to leave. And something interesting about it too is that the statue that we saw that was like the prominent centerpiece of the village last episode, we see is turned on its side. And that's actually why I chose it too for the thumbnail. So they try to convince him, and we'll talk about that in just a second, but they try to convince him to leave, but he's basically praying to the god to save the village because he still believes that is what is causing the volcano to be upset. And so they have a little conversation, and they basically tell the grandfather that the outsiders have gone up to fight against the volcano. And pretty much we cut then to the group going there. Do we want to say anything about this little quick scene with the grandfather? I kind of want to get this shot right here.
I think we can address it a little further in the episode.
Okay.
Because it's very clear, like we talked about it in the last episode, that there was a disruption of the natural hierarchy inside of this village, and then when that happened, the mountain literally exploded with fire, and the idol in the middle of the village landed on its side, which is going to be addressed in this episode. But I think the centerpiece of what's going on and why the gang has to do what they're doing in this episode is around the grandfather and the brother that Krillin defeated in the sparring match, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So he's just kind of like, the situation he's in now is, how would I put it? There's an absence of a hierarchy that he belongs in, so he's still worshiping this mountain god, because the statue, even though it's on its side, is literally still the order of this village that's being shaken up. There's nothing that's replaced it, right?
Right. And there's nothing that set it right. It's still tipped over. Oh,
so it's kind of a poignant shot of him kneeling at a.
Look at Kolb's in here. Solid. Thanks
Yeah,
for
boy.
that, buddy. Yeah. So, and that's why I also wanted
like kneeling at something that is wrong. You know,
Mm-hmm.
like we saw that it was like not right in the sense that it's basically looks like the toilet demons. Like it looks like a demon. Which I think we can tie that up later in this episode. But I just really like you said, the shot of him basically just kneeling at it because there's nothing else, you know?
Right. Let's say everything's collapsed. Their ethos has collapsed, right? And now what is below but magma? We're gonna find out here. And that's also why I stopped it there, because we're right about to switch to. Oh no, it's doing that thing. It's gonna switch to Goku, but it's doing that thing where it doesn't want to skip around for me. Here we go. So we get back to Goku, and he's still blindfolded, trying to find Mr. Popo. And basically, there's really not much development here. This is basically the same thing that we saw last episode. He tries to find Goku. Popo admonishes him that he's not actually trying to sense him. He's trying to like use his sound. And it's surprising because I've been watching a little bit of Dragon Ball with my kid, and something that Goku does early on it's like the second episode in that arc with the magic stone they have to find. He smells Master Roshi, and he can't do that to Mr. Popo, right? It's another separation between the earthly and the heavenly in that regard, right? Roshi is very earthly, and even using a stone, right, is of earth. And so he can't use that, but he's trying to use his senses. He's trying to get around it, and that's basically missing the point of the lesson. And that's pretty much what we saw last episode as well.
Yeah, I think there's a little bit here too where after Goku fails to find Mr. Popo this first time, Mr. Popo says, "You need to expand your ki to find me." And then Goku's like, "Expand my ki," and he doesn't understand what he means by that. And then it just kind of cuts away. And that's about as much as we're going to get about. That might be the last important thing we say about Goku before changes, right? That Popo's basically telling him that he needs to expand his own ki to be able to sense Mr. Popo's ki, and Goku's going, "What? What does that mean?"
Right. And I think it goes to show the maturity. There has to be a level of maturity there, something that's not afforded in Super, let's say. Like, Super Goku could never graduate from Popo's training, more or less, because there's never the maturity of self. Because expanding one's ki involves knowledge of one's being self-aware, more or less, right?
Yeah. It's expanding one's ki is it's an interesting concept as well, because it's kind of to say that you have to interface in a spiritual way to understand spiritual things. You can't just be a receptor, right? But it's through being spiritual that you can understand spiritual things. So Goku expanding his ki is just something that doesn't resonate, doesn't register to mean anything to him, because as we're seeing in the scene, he's trying to rely on all of his earthly senses to be able to sense things. And this is sort of like, you need to be more, not just like sense things, but you need to be more to be able to actually understand them.
Right. And to embody, right? And I think that's a good word to use to embody that ethos, right? The method by which he is expanding his ki is by embodying the idea he represents, right? And he doesn't understand that right now. But as we're going to see, like in the very next episode, the first thing we see from Goku is that instantiation. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. So it takes a level of self-awareness that Goku doesn't have and almost cannot have before he's matured as a person beyond being a kid, more or less. He has to be able to take responsibility, which we'll get into.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just, I don't want to leave saying nothing else about Kid Goku. It's the last time we see Kid Goku right here, and I think we may cut back to him one more time, but we can go ahead and move on.
Yeah.
So back at the mountain, they all are basically waiting for the magma to come, and they're gonna try and blast it, basically, I think is what they try to do first. A major earthquake opens a fissure in the ground, and Krillin falls into it. Chaozu, using his flying technique, rescues Krillin from the crack and pulls him to safety. Tien then suggests that Krillin and Yamcha should learn how to fly so they could be more effective. And then the volcano's eruption intensifies, and they have to like refocus on that. That's just a little scene of how they deal with stuff right here. I just want to mention one thing before we proceed. I like that shot right there. And that would be Krillin and Yamcha's inability to use fly. I think that's really one of the highlighted things here. The flight ability or fly. I mean, what does it mean to fly? I think that's a good, because we talked about it a bit when we were talking about their original Tien and Chiaotzu's original inception in the 22nd Tenkaichi Budokai. But I think the idea of flying and having Krillin and Yamcha and Goku be able to fly is going to mean something, another layer, if you will. But I'll go ahead and let you. I'm curious on what you have to say.
I think it's a continuation, like you said, from what we said before, where when you fly, you get an elevated perspective, and that's really tied into Tien still, with him having his elevated perspective, his third eye, what all of that represents, and that's also why Tien is sort of the main focus of this little filler, whatever we want to call it, like 2-episode arc, is that, and why it's happening at the same time as Goku can't seem to have the self-awareness he needs, and why Krillin's lack of self-awareness kicks this off in the first place too. I think it has to do specifically with the perspective, the ability to understand the situation, to be able to elevate oneself in such a way that you can see the context beyond just where you fit into it. So, like for instance, with Tien, we see that in the future with how he uses like the tri-beam cannon, and it looks like he's mapping it down onto the world from above. Like I think that fundamentally the way that it's introduced to us has to do with that. Now,
right.
What the journey they're on, this whole concept of what they're doing right here, going their own ways and also going out into the world and maturing, is elevating that perspective. But they don't have the type of perspective with the situation that Tien has. And so we see in their response to this situation that they don't have that perspective, right? So for instance, the first thing we see with Krillin is that he tries to attack the lava itself with a Kamehameha wave, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which just like scatters it and burns him, and it doesn't work. You're trying to fight the magma itself directly. And like Tien, he tries the same thing, and as soon as it doesn't work, he starts getting to work doing something a little bit more sophisticated to deal with the problem than just attack the lava itself, as if the lava was their adversary, which we know the lava is not. And so Krillin, immediately after he tries, I think it's right after he tries to attack the lava, is when he gets swallowed up by the crack in the earth and then has to be saved by Chiaotzu, who can fly, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of like a finger at the fact that your perspective is too low. You don't understand what you're contending with. You're trying to fight an effect instead of the cause.
Well, and it points out the I don't want to say drawback, but like the limiting factor on the turtle school, right? Turtles are ground creatures, more or less, and more or less they definitely are. And cranes fly, right? And the elevated perspective is a great way to put it. I think that it's really shown and borne out, and kind of the failings of the each perspective in a way. So we have like Krillin, who's falling into his vice of trying to, like, you know, impress girls and do things that were literally told he was told not to do. And so he obviously going in there and getting burned, which we'll get into in just a second, or at least I'll show in just a second. Really shows that is an intrinsic part of his character, because we're going to see this again and again. It's really Krillin's differentiation from Roshi that allows it to be this way. But that's the outcome of his vice, more or less. And then we see Tien, who kind of overestimates his own power, right? Like he makes this. He tries to make a landslide, and he's still overcome by the lava, right? He can't do it alone. And that's kind of the thing that he has that he's lacking, but that doesn't indicate that a lack of I don't want to say foresight, but like a lack of vision in that way, right? here's Krillin's Kamehameha wave. But
I get it out of order. Yeah.
yeah,
But they're
I think
representative.
it's fine. I think you have it in the right order. But what I mean is Krillin's instinctual like feeding of the dragon, let's say, his instincts is not the same thing as Tien's overestimation of the power of enlightenment, right? They're not the same kind of moral failing. I don't know if it's a moral failing. They're not the same kind of failing. And so Tien doesn't get burned up by that, right? And he can fly because he does have an overarching vision. It's just that he is overestimating his ability to bring that to fruition. Which is where we get to the next part.
Yeah, and also Krillin says here, right when he goes to do the Kamehameha, he says to himself that he wants to show off, right? That he wish he could show this off to Mint.
Mm-hmm.
So it's sort of, his mind isn't necessarily on what is the issue. He's still thinking about the cause of this problem, right? Which is fundamentally that he doesn't belong in this hierarchy, you know? Like, he's not a part of it, and he's disrupted it by inserting himself to try to show off to Mint. And he still wants to show off to Mint, and that's kind of like his focus. And that's guiding why he's doing what he's doing, and the irony of him using the Kamehameha wave, right? Because he's forthrightly saying what he wants, which is to look cool to Mint, which obviously does not help resolve the situation in any way.
Right. And the truth of that statement, like, you know, instinctual sexual reproduction, let's say, the natural mechanics of the universe are like, yeah, whatever, that exists. So does this lava. But let me go through that real quick, what we see there. So Krillin does all that, like we said. He tries to impress Mint. He fires a Kamehameha wave. Tien uses the Dodon Ray to blast apart the rocks like we just saw. And then, like I was just getting at with the answer to Tien's enlightened position of overestimating his ability, is the Yamcha coming in to offer cooperation, right? And so Yamcha sees that like the lava's burning the forest and stuff, and so he wants it to rain. He sees a nearby waterfall, and he detonates. Wait, that's not right. He watches that and goes over there, and that's basically where we end off. But I wanted to. Is this Yamcha or Krillin? I think this is Krillin. Yeah. So I just wanted to mention that Yamcha's plan is to basically get the water to put out all of this magma, which I think is a really interesting. This is actually where some of the symbolism of the walking their own ways comes from.
Yeah, I was about to say, and then they went their own ways.
Right, exactly. So Yamcha goes over to get that water, and we can also see the earthly element of that, right? The natural mixing there of elements being water and magma to kind of nullify. And I think it's symbolic for Yamcha to be the one to use the Kamehameha wave to do it. But we'll talk about that in a minute. I don't think he's actually blasted it off yet.
Yeah.
So the next thing we see, we have our little break, and Krillin makes his way through the village to find Mint and her grandfather, and they find at the toilet demon's base he is still praying there. And so Krillin goes and tells them they need to leave, but Mint's grandfather remains adamant in his belief that his prayers alone can save them. Paoru scolds Krillin, accusing the outsiders of having no right to criticize their faith or traditions. And meanwhile, more volcanic activity intensifies, lava surges forward, and Tien tries to calm the lava down by blasting it with Dodon rays, which doesn't work. Oh wait, he does do this though. He does make this giant fissure where the lava goes in and then immediately flows back out.
Yep.
It's just it's a force of nature that's beyond their strength. It's not, let's say, beyond their comprehension. Like Tien has a good comprehension of this. It's just beyond his grasp, let's say. His reach is exceeding his grasp.
Yeah, he's got the right idea, but it's basically he's like, oh, the lava belongs under the earth. I'll put the lava back under the earth. It's like your capacity to create a space under the earth for the lava to reside where it belongs is not there, dude.
Right. And so I also do want to mention this little scene here with the family and Krillin. And it's interesting to say that when confronted with new information that upsets the entire worldview of a society, there will always be holdouts that will cling to the remnants of that society. And that's not to say that's a bad thing, because sometimes those traditions are lasting for a reason. But this is kind of what we see with the advent of the quartet arriving here in the village and upsetting the natural order of the village by bringing in new ideas and instantiating and embodying those new ideas. Then we see that this like worship of the purely physical is crumbling, and the grandfather, being all that he's ever known, can't really deal with that, and so insists that his prayers are the only things that can save them.
Yeah, I think this is the crucial point to point out why any of this is happening, right? Like I said in the last episode, Krillin kicks all this off by sparring with, was it Paoru? Is it? I think it's P-A.
Yeah, I think Paoru, yeah.
So Krillin spars with him drunkenly and makes kind of a fool of him by doing so, and disrupts the natural order, right? Because the natural order is that they live in peace, they do the rituals that they do, and there's someone who is at the top of the hierarchy there living those patterns and doing those rituals. Krillin comes in and makes a joke of that. Then he comes up to them later and he's like, hey, you got to abandon the center of your worship. And the person that he made a fool of in sparring, even though he's physically stronger than him, turns to him and kind of scolds him in a spiritual way, which is, you have no right to criticize our beliefs, which I think is very on point for what is happening here, right? He doesn't actually just defer to Krillin because he's physically stronger, right? They have a way of being that Krillin he's not reconciled. He hasn't proven that he's better than their way of being, let's say, right? His drunkenness has created it so that he wasn't a very good example to how they should act or what they should emulate that's higher than this. So he's still below the idol of the physical world. He's below that because he has not embodied something greater. And he's basically being told that by the person that he physically beat, and that should be his clue that he's not getting it, Right,
and so I like that. I like too that I think the drunkenness of Krillin. Oh goodness, yeah, the drunkenness of Krillin has to do a little bit with that, but I think the ideas that Krillin is still below, let's say below the earth. He belongs below the earth. He would have been there without Chiaotzu, right?
Yeah.
It is very telling on where he's sitting in the hierarchy among this village, right? And even though he is stronger, like we said, it isn't to say that he has shown an ideal, right? Strength alone is not an ideal. And
they're all trying to be Goku here, right?
But I was gonna relate to that, yeah, in just a second.
Yeah,
because when Goku interacts in such a way with these kind of I don't want to just say filler because he does this in the actual main story too. But when he interacts with systems that he more or less turns their hierarchy upside down, or like, shows them clearly that there's a better ideal, it does usually affect the people more, and it's not as what do I want to say, impudent maybe, because it is that coming from Krillin right now, like, hey, you got to get out of here, even though this what is representative of your god is too powerful for us, and we can't.
Yeah, like we're not able to beat the physical instantiation of your god, and the only way that I've shown that I know anything better than you is to physically beat you. But I follow an ideal that's stronger than you are, So it's
right.
like,
and for Pauru too, he's like, well, I'm also following an idea that's stronger than you are, right?
yep.
And that's kind of the sticking point.
Whereas like Goku leaves in his wake people who are inspired by him, and that's what this whole arc is about: is the power and responsibility of being an idea and inspiring people.
Mm-hmm.
It's layers because the gang here is trying to do something that was inspired by what Goku has already done. But what they're trying to do is to become an inspiration to people because they're elevating themselves to that point. They're trying to approach the point where Goku is right now, which is that he is an idea. And how would you replace, let's say, this idol or this center of worship, but to be that ideal, to create an idea that people can emulate to better the world as well. But Krillin's failing to do that. His drunkenness is indicative of that. His inability to contend with the magma, his fall, his focus on vanity, the insufficiency of his own Kamehameha wave speaks to it, right?
Yeah, exactly. And we usually see that in Dragon Ball, is that the even characters who have strength and are instantiated, they can still commit moral failings that leave them powerless in situations that they may otherwise be able to handle. And that's kind of what happens with Krillin here. It's a lot less for Tien. Like, Tien doesn't have any moral failing that he undergoes per se, besides being overconfident, and so it's a lot less extreme for him. But yeah, and I think that Goku's interactions with these societies and hierarchies that he sees when he upsets the natural order is usually way more harmonious because it's part of the process that's happened. Like, Goku doesn't tell them mid process before he solved the problem, like, hey, you need to listen to me, and
yeah.
all that. Like, it really goes to embodiment over articulation, more or less. So then we get to our last little part here of Goku, right?
Yeah, I guess this is the last scene of Goku.
It's got to be. This is right. I think so. So let's just watch.
Well, before we get into Goku, one other thing had happened that we didn't point out, which is that Yamcha goes and fires the Kamehameha wave
at the right here at the end,
at the wall, and knocks the water loose so that it can start flowing into the forest, which is a reflection of what Goku did right after the first tournament, right? I think it's right after the very first world tournament where he goes out to the village of the pterodactyl dinosaur guys.
The bubblegum one.
Yeah, the guru gum guys. Yeah. But he resolves their problem by doing the same thing, right? He uses his Kamehameha to loose water, which we pointed out back then when we talked about that episode, that it was kind of a reflection of what he had seen Master Roshi do on Mount Frypan, which we're coming full circle. We're getting there, but, because what Master Roshi did then didn't necessarily save the mountain, it destroyed the mountain. Then Goku he iterates upon that whenever he does use his Kamehameha to save the village with them, right?
Right. So, but Roshi does per se. Firstly, it's a moral failing that the castle's like that to begin with, that Fire Mountain's like that at all.
Yeah.
And so Roshi points out that this kingdom cannot exist, and then it doesn't exist, right? That's it. That's the truth that's spoken by the Kamehameha wave, and then it happens. And when Goku uses his Kamehameha wave against the Guru, well, it's not really against them, but like against the dam that they built, right? It's because that is saying that this is against the natural order and it shouldn't be, and basically then it isn't. It is the ought that Goku can wield versus the is that Roshi can wield. Does that make sense?
Yeah, exactly. And the ought is what we're talking about here, right? The idea. Like, do you have an elevated enough perspective that you know how things ought to be?
Yes.
Because the gang doesn't. And so this is them kind of interfacing with that ought, and this is how Yamcha does it. It's the same way that, he's like, oh, well, this ought to be this way, right? This water should be over here so that it balances things out. So he's getting it. He's like developing that perspective and emulating Goku in that way. Because that's all he's trying to do here, is to be Goku for these people. That's fundamentally the purpose of this lesson, right?
And they're trying to follow the path of the Logos in the best way that they each can. And so Yamcha's ingenuity here and the propensity to bring habitable order by mixing even two chaotic things, water's inherently also chaotic, is indicative of his masculine, immature masculine idea and ideal, right? And so he's able to do this, and so these are some of the times that people appreciate Yamcha, and it's like, yeah, Yamcha really shows his potential. If only he could learn to like merge these in his own life. But yeah, I think, is there anything else we want to say before we move on to Goku's last scene as a kid?
One last thing, now that we've kind of talked about the water, is there's an interesting kind of pattern I noticed about the resolution of this episode that has to do with the squaring of the four elements, like earth, air, fire, and water. So there's a lot of dealing with Tien's over here trying to reshape the earth to create a proper path for the lava to travel along. Yamcha's over here trying to get the water to the lava to put the fire out. And the air, to me, is just kind of, it's associated with the space that they need to be able to be in to have the elevated perspective in the first place, to sort these three things together into a harmonious balance, right? And that's what...
Well, we could also say the air, the breath, right? We can say the Kamehameha wave, the Dodonpa, the manifestation there, that we can use that as air as well, I would say, symbolically.
And fundamentally the flying, right? There's a vertical element to it where these Yamcha and Krillin can't fly, but Tien can fly and can see a bigger perspective, so he's reshaping the world for the lava, but Yamcha's kind of on a lower resolution scale, and he's interfacing with, water to try to bring in a balance a different way. And so the whole each going their own way thing kind of works in the sense that we're looking at, it's like they were trying to condense the idea of the four corners of the earth, or the four elements of the earth, so that we could step into the next phase of the story, right?
Right.
I don't know. I just kind of get that impression a little bit.
I agree with you, because we need to square those the four basic things before we can grow, right? And we're about to change a lot of things about everything in the show. So I totally agree with that, and I think the walking their own way as well is indicative of their embodiment. And like I was saying about Yamcha, he has the potentiality of the Logos, right? He's shown that over and over, and we've seen that in his ability to use the Kamehameha wave, and even in this episode here, where he's using two chaotic things to bring habitable order, and that's very along those lines. Tien is not really on that same path, and hasn't really been, right? It's not his isn't the one that's been making habitable order out of chaos. I don't think he's done it ever. And so it shows that his way of doing it, right, is by envisioning and having this enlightened idea to plan out and manipulate the physical world around him to create habitable order, sure, but it's not so much under the same processes. We're not using that same truth to achieve that. And so we see Tien walking that way, and we see Yamcha walking that way, and then Krillin, I don't think we really talked about this, but there is one thing that Krillin does. He like helps, I think he like throws a rock in their way because there's about to be a bunch of lava or something. But we can see that he's still focusing on Mint, right? So he's going his own way in that regard. And it actually is foreshadowing and will come to fruition in Krillin's character at some point. It's what's going to separate him from actually just becoming Roshi too.
Yeah. And what I was saying kind of gets squared up in this final scene with them.
Oh, Chaozu has no direction. He's as we know, not no direction, but as we know, he's an manifestation of Tien. Yeah, an extension of Tien. Go ahead.
But what I was saying, like squaring the elements, each having their own thing that they're doing. It gets squared in the next scene, so I'll hold off on that. But Krillin has a role to play. It's just not obvious what his role is yet, right?
Right. And we also have to remember that the fool precedes the hero. So Krillin acting foolish here in the beginning of the episode isn't like eternally damning for him or anything like that.
No, he creates the scenario with which the hero can arise and create a higher ideal, right?
Exactly. And so now we need to talk about Goku's last scene. And amazing. Yep. I love that it froze right there. That's so perfect. We love that about this. Here it is.
Oh, it's Chris Sombra calling me.
That's right. We do Patreon patrons that donate $100 a month get to call.
Let them call in
straight off. So up on the upper world at the lookout, Goku continues to train and he struggles to sense ki effectively. And that's it. That's literally all that happens in this few seconds.
We see that he's making progress because there's kind of this, it happens multiple times with this training with Piccolo where we as the audience can see Goku making progress.
Popo,
and then Piccolo, I keep calling him Piccolo. Why am I calling him Piccolo? Popo, as he's training with Popo doesn't acknowledge his progress. And he does it again in this one where we see that Goku has actually found his location, but he hasn't sussed out the shape of him with his ki. And then whenever he actually isn't able to use it that precisely, then Popo tells him, no better, and that's basically the last we see of Kid Goku, is him really just, it's very binary. It's like you're a master of it or you don't get the acknowledgement, I guess.
Right. And I think that's because, the judge that is created by having Popo be what you're striving for, right? Him being Goku's master in this training it's a very harsh judge, right? You either are empty and you're open to everything in the universe, or you're not. There's really no in between. I think that's why Popo is the way he is.
Yeah, I think because ultimately this is to set Goku up to be able to contend with the final threat of Dragon Ball. And so they cannot allow any half measures. It has to be either Goku has mastered this domain or he cannot stand up against the impending hierarchical collapse by introducing Piccolo to it, right?
Right. Ma Junior. And that's it. That's it for Kid Goku. We'll have one little like on the next episode part of him, but
a weird thing at the end of this episode too, yeah.
But pretty much that's it. So then we see Yamcha's plan seems to have worked. The water and Tien's efforts have created a large trench where basically the water and the magma mix, and it finally diverts the lava away from the village. With the village saved, Mint springs forward to thank Krillin, and the villagers as a whole express their gratitude to the fighters. I think we just have a little more here.
And they say, it's a miracle.
Oh, yeah. They have to do this first, right? Wait, didn't they?
So this is the end of this episode is the point of the whole 2-episode arc right here, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where essentially everyone celebrates, and then Palru says, you didn't do this. Like, you didn't do anything. It was because of the prayers to the mountain god. You guys simply did a bunch of flashy stuff. It has nothing to do with you. Which is that's the point. Like, they're trying to create an ideal by which people can orient themselves, and they didn't. They failed, and that's why it erupts again. And it's like, what's going to happen when you guys aren't here to keep on fighting this calamity, so to speak? Are you going to create a pattern that other people can embody? Are you going to create a change in the world that makes it so that this is no longer relevant? Or are you going to stay here forever and just keep fighting this mountain, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Krillin is ultimately confronted with this because Krillin hasn't done his part. He hasn't said his part of this right. It's ultimately coming down to Krillin's responsibility to be that ideal, to be seen as something worthy of emulating, and also prove that if you emulate his mode of being, it will create order from undifferentiated chaos, right?
Mm-hmm. And it has to be Krillin's, let's say the impetus for Krillin's doing any of this. That's the cause, and that would be that he is, he's trying to not just find like a girlfriend or anything like that. He's not really trying to do that right now, but he is trying to navigate the field of masculine and feminine. Because if we noticed, Yamcha went through that season 1, Goku went through that season 1, but Krillin never really had that. And so we're seeing some of that bear out in his interactions in the world, which is what Roshi like tells him you have to go do what Goku did and go be about in the world, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so his method of being in the world, his instantiation of being in the world, is one that is seeking to become that spirit which combines the masculine and feminine and thereby elevates the human spirit. And that's why he's gets drunk and tries to impress Mint and all that.
And that's how he fails also, because he doesn't disrespecting Mint's big brother and disrespecting the patterns that allowed Mint to exist in the first place is not how you do that. And what happens fundamentally is, like, while this eruption is going on, a giant rock gets flung at them. Krillin jumps into action with the other two, and they all punch the rock and kick it, and it explodes, and it saves them.
The
and
other two, Chaozu does actually help, but anyways, the other two.
Oh, does Chaozu?
Yeah, but go ahead.
I say the other two because he's Tien.
Yes.
But they jump in and destroy the rock directly in front of them and prove to them, like, you would die if not for our mode of being.
Mm-hmm.
Then they say, I'm sorry. They apologize, right? Essentially for like doubting Krillin. Then what's interesting is the joint attack. Yamcha and Tien do a combined attack, and essentially just it's kind of funny because ironically all of their just blasting at the lava has never worked. But once Krillin has essentially kind of squared his reputation,
I mean, that's really what it was. The mechanism by which it happens is just the manifestation of it, I would say. Yeah, it's definitely Krillin.
Then it works.
Does it. Yeah.
And it creates a situation where, and they say it out loud, they say, now in the future, this isn't going to happen again,
Mm-hmm.
right? Until then, they're struggling against it. But once the conceptualization of Krillin and as an extension, like the hero that he's trying to emulate, once that's set right, it only takes them doing that attack forthrightly to create the situation that then makes it so that it's not going to be a problem in the future. So they do become an ideal for them at that point, but only after that. Only after Krillin's image is squared properly, and they actually respect him, and
Right,
see that
because
he's actually trying to
like
protect
we've been
them.
saying, this whole thing is symbolic of the underpinnings of this society being dismantled and thrown into chaos by the arrival of Krillin and the rest of the boys.
Yeah.
And so it has to be resolved, and it's only resolved once they prove their quality. And so once that happens, the crisis is averted. And it's each by their own way, of course, as we were explaining earlier. And I think it's why Krillin takes the center stage, even though Tien's the strongest. And I think that's something that old Dragon Ball does a lot better than new Dragon Ball, in the way that it doesn't just focus on the strongest per se, but the one that actually has meaning, the character has meaning at that moment.
Yeah, and I think that's also why Krillin doesn't join in on that joint attack, right? His part of the attack was being perceived properly, right?
Yeah, exactly. And so, right, and so they divert the lava, and the episode kind of abruptly ends.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of these two episodes for their pacing and where they fit in. Like, they make sense and they're kind of important, and it's like
it gives us insight on the status and everyone's final moments as these immature versions of themselves, and it really helps us see that how they went from that to what we see in Changes. Without these episodes, I think that it's a lot more jarring, because we really don't see any of this maturity that they do gain. But yeah, I also agree. The pacing is really awkward.
Yeah, it seems like for the animators it was awkward. Like, they didn't know how to split this into two 23-minute chunks and name them things that even made sense within their own little run,
Yeah.
Like, the name of the first episode, I felt like, actually came from this episode.
Yeah.
Each going their own way. I don't think the concept of that bore itself out until well after the runtime of that episode.
Yeah, and then I think also Hotter Than Lava belongs on the other side, the other episode, because it really is let's say, because heat is change, and so it's the change that's brought forth by the arrival of Krillin and the gang that destroys the society and makes the thing erupt. I think it belongs better on the other episode.
Yeah,
they should
because
just switch them.
That would be the meaning of Hotter Than Lava, right? And that they have to burn hotter than the lava to be able to defeat it, and they can't. And not until, they become something different.
Not until they can walk their own way. Oh, wow. There we go.
But overall, like, as a 2-episode arc,
but
not including the stuff with Goku, because honestly, almost everything we see of Goku in these 2 episodes is not really much to write home about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
but
it's a lot of it the same.
I get what it's going for. I feel like these 2 could have been 1 episode.
They really could. They could have shortened it down for sure.
And the pacing of the episode too is very much like, as I was rewatching it today, I was like, there's a lot of shots of just Krillin running, like just running through this tiny village.
Yeah, I mean, if they just said like do 1 episode, but I mean, we have to acknowledge it is filler. It is literally there to eat up some minutes. There's part of that. We
feel like it was padded out a bit.
Here on this channel, we do appreciate the filler in Dragon Ball a lot, but I don't want to say that we don't acknowledge it for what it is.
Yeah.
To say it that way. And so then we see this face here, the battles each will face in preparation for the Tenkaichi tournament. This is kind of where we leave off.
There's a funny misdirect shot at the end too, where it shows the card. It shows like a fight card with everyone on it, and it's got Kid Goku and Kid Piccolo on it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's like, oh, we're jumping straight into the tournament next time.
Here we go.
And then
next episode.
Yeah, there they are. They're gonna fight next episode, and then obviously that's not how it all looks. All these characters look different by the time they show up to the tournament.
Every single one.
Every single one of these characters, including the weird horse horned man at the bottom.
But anyways, to summarize, I think this mini arc, this filler arc here, I think it does a good job in some regards. I think there are some parts that are really lacking, especially like the time room episode. Is that what it was? Time room?
Yeah.
But it does really show the level of spiritual maturity that's required for Goku to become who he becomes, and the reason that so many people really like Dragon Ball Z's iteration of Goku, because it's a continuation of the character that we'll see next episode. And it makes sense, and it follows with his growth as a character. It doesn't shirk any of that. And as far as the other ones too, we really do also get to see they're going out in the world, why they're becoming who they will eventually become in Z, and we're gonna see how they change as well in the next episode. But I think that's really all I have to say.
Yeah, we had more to say about this episode than I thought we would, so I'll take it.
I'll take it. Next episode will be wild. We'll be talking for a while. We have a lot of symbolic things to cover. Not only that, but we're out of the filler arc. We're going to be back in canon story mode, and we're going to be starting the 23rd Tenkaichi Budokai.
Yeah, it's going to be solid story. And I'm calling it. It's going to be solid, important story all the way until well into Z. So,
yep. Even with what some people consider filler in the last 5 episodes, but it's
not
super filler. It's super important. It's not really too not too fillerish. Right. So I think that's pretty much all I have to say. So unless you have anything to add, Brock, I'm gonna go and wrap us up.
Go ahead.
All right. Well, we hope you enjoyed this episode. It was 132, hotter than lava. And this has been your host on the left, Owl.
And your host on the right, Brock.
And we hope you guys have a good night.